You ever walk into a place where you already know you don't belong, but you walk in anyway because something bigger than pride or nostalgia is calling you back? That's what it felt like that morning, pulling my old Tacoma through the gate at Fort Ridgeline, New Mexico, sun just clearing the horizon, the air thick with dust and diesel, the kind of morning that wraps itself around your bones and says, yeah, you're back whether you like it or not. Maybe I should have expected trouble, wearing black Army PT shorts, a faded gray shirt soft from 100 washes, and a duffel over my shoulder. Not regulation, not a statement, just habit. But the admin officer barely glanced at me before deciding I didn't measure up. You can't wear that unless you're active duty, he said, making it sound like I just tried to rob a bank. Guess he didn't notice the years stitched into my hands, or the way I stood, or maybe he just didn't care regulations are easier than people. You know what I mean? I didn't argue. Never helps. I just nodded, started to turn, and that's when my shirt hitched up a little, just enough for a sliver of ink on my upper back to catch the light 3 numbers, angular and precise, and a small, stylized owl with its wings out. Not your average tattoo. Not art for art's sake. That ink was the only souvenir I kept from a mission nobody talks about. One that left 4 faces trapped in a photograph that's been folded and unfolded so many times, the creases are part of the memory. Let me back up a sec. I was there because Sergeant Major Dean had called, 3 weeks back, voice like gravel, said he needed someone to pace the female recruits for their annual eval. Someone who knows what it means to push through when everything's falling apart. He meant someone who's tasted fear and kept running. I said yes before he even finished. Not out of some misplaced loyalty to the Army, though, I won't lie. Sometimes I miss it like a phantom limb, but because I remember being 19 and scared, running with women who'd already learned how to disappear into their own grit. So there I was, 46, gray threading through brown hair, lines around my eyes like road maps to every hard lesson, standing in front of the admin desk, papers in hand. The specialist, Morrison, barely old enough to rent a car, looked at me like he couldn't quite place what category I fit into. Ma'am, he said, that uniform isn't authorized. His colleagues, coffee cups in hand, chimed in, talking about dress up like I was a child in my mother's closet. I stayed quiet. Let them have their moment. Regulations are like armor for folks who've never needed real courage. Morrison went to fetch his supervisor, and while he was gone, I watched the recruits warming up through the window, so full of jittery energy, so sure the world made sense if you just ran fast enough. When Morrison came back, he'd brought Lieutenant Kalina Guy with shiny boots, razor-sharp creases, and the kind of confidence that comes from always getting the answers right on paper. MS. Carver, there's some confusion about your participation, he said, all smooth and polite, but behind his smile, the steel was showing. He offered me a navy blue base t-shirt, said I could wear that if I wanted to stay, otherwise, I'd have to leave. I looked at the shirt, looked at him, then just nodded, picked up my bag, and turned toward the door. That's what happened. My shirt rode up, and those 3 numbers 1375 caught the fluorescent light, along with the owl perched on crossed swords. Most people in the room didn't notice, but Staff Sergeant Rodriguez did. He stopped cold, clipboard sliding from his fingers, eyes fixed on my back like he'd seen a ghost. See, Rodriguez had spent time in intel and read the reports, the ones with most of the words blacked out. He knew what Detachment 1375 meant. He knew that tattoo wasn't something you picked up on a dare. Rodriguez slipped off to a back office and called a number he'd memorized but never used, a number from a file that technically didn't exist anymore. When someone picked UPA voice, all business, no name Rodriguez, told them what he'd seen. Pause. Then orders. Treat her with full courtesy. Give her whatever she needs. And if anyone disrespects her, they'll answer to people who don't wear name tapes. Call ended. Rodriguez's hands shook as he hung up. 10 minutes later, Major Ronson came storming out of the admin building. His boots were scuffed, his uniform lived in, and he didn't bother with pleasantries. He asked Kalen why authorization for a decorated veteran hadn't been processed. Kalen stammered about paperwork, but Ronson shut him down, cold as ice. You question the authorization of someone who's done more in one deployment than you'll do in your career, he said it and even raised his voice. Then he headed straight for me. But before Ronson could get there, Colonel Ford stepped out, man, moved like he'd been through real things, silver in his hair, a presence you could feel from across the field. He stopped 6 feet away, hands behind his back, and asked, just loud enough for the building to hear, "That ink on your back, where'd you earn it?" I answered Northern Gate. April 2000. NATO fallback. He nodded, jaw tight, then his eyes softened a little. Turns out, his brother had been in that convoy I'd helped pull him out after the second IED hit. He lived another 16 years because of you, Ford said. Married, had kids, died in his sleep. That got me, just for a second. That's the only medal I ever cared about. Then Ford did something nobody expected, snapped off a salute, sharp and clear, right there in front of everybody. You could hear the silence roll across the base. Even the recruits stopped mid-stretch. If Sergeant Carver wants to wear that uniform, she wears it. If anyone's got a problem, they come to me. And just like that, the rules changed. He invited me to walk with him. No speeches, just respect. In his office, Ford pulled up files with more redactions than text. Detachment 1375, he said. Night Owl Group. Disbanded. Heroes that never existed. I shrugged. That's the idea. He slid a signed paper across the desk. Me clearance updated. You want to train with our people, you do it in whatever you're comfortable wearing. I nodded. Appreciate it, sir. When we walked back out, you could feel the shift in the air. Same staffers who'd snickered before found somewhere else to look. The recruits stood a little taller. Ford addressed them all. Sergeant Carver will be pacing today's run. She's cleared for whatever she's wearing, effective immediately. Kalen tried to apologize, but I stopped him with a look. No point rubbing salt in. The run itself, let me tell you, there's something beautiful about muscle memory. Those recruits, full of bravado, found themselves struggling just to keep pace. By the third lap, nobody cared what I was wearing. They were just trying to keep up. Ford watched from the sidelines, arms folded, quiet pride on his face. Afterward, as I sat on the steps outside the motor pool, the sun beating down, a young private approached, clutching a water bottle like it was armor. Ma'am, were you really with Night Owl? I just looked at her, saw the hope and the fear and the unspoken question. Not alone, I said, never alone. But the others didn't make it back. She nodded, eyes wide, then asked, why'd you come back after everything? I smiled, not quite, but almost, and said, someone's out to show you what quiet strength looks like. What it means to serve without needing recognition. What costs and why it's worth it. She watched me a long moment, then just nodded, understanding more than words could say. As I drove away, the base shrinking in my rear view, I knew things had changed not just for me, but for anyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong, that their story didn't matter. Maybe next time someone talks about Detachment 1375, it won't be in whispers or remorse. It'll be in the way people pause, stand a little straighter, remember what real service looks like. Yeah, that happened. So, have you ever seen someone stand their ground when it would have been easier to walk away? Share this story with someone who understands quiet strength. And let me know down below, do you think respect should be earned or given? Let's talk about it.